Section 1. The calm before the storm when we moved into Maple Ridge Estates, I thought we'd finally found peace. The streets were quiet, the neighbors waved politely, and the park across from our house had smooth, paved paths perfect for my daughter, Lily. She was 10, clever, funny, and used a wheelchair because of a spinal condition she'd had since birth. After years of moving from apartment to apartment, we finally had a place where she could safely go outside, meet friends, and practice her physical therapy in the open air. Her therapist, Daniel, came 3 times a week. He was patient, gentle, and treated Lily like family. The sessions usually took place on the sidewalk outside our home or at the small community park. It wasn't just therapy, it was freedom. But from the first week, one person decided that our version of normal didn't fit hers. Karen Whitmore, the self-appointed queen of the HOA. Karen had lived there for 15 years and made it her mission to enforce every rule, written or imagined. The color of mailboxes, the height of grass, the style of curtains, nothing escaped her scrutiny. At first, I thought she was just a busybody with too much time on her hands, but it soon became clear she was more than that. She was obsessed with control. The first time she approached us, she wore that forced, sugary smile that never touched her eyes. "Hi there," she said, clipboard in hand. "I noticed your daughter's therapist parks in the guest area. You'll need to have him park on the street instead. HOA regulations." I explained gently that Daniel was Lily's licensed caregiver and that parking close was necessary because he transported therapy equipment. She frowned, pretending to take notes. "I understand," she said in that brittle tone that always meant the opposite. "But we can't make exceptions. Rules are rules." After that, the complaints started: anonymous notes in the mailbox, emails from the HOA account, pictures of Lily's therapy equipment captioned improper use of common area. It wasn't just cruel, it was personal. Karen didn't like the sight of disability or anything that disrupted her vision of a perfect neighborhood. I tried to ignore her. Daniel told me to stay calm, focus on Lily's progress, and not let negativity distract us. And for a while it worked. Lily was improving, smiling again, getting stronger. But Karen wasn't finished. She began showing up during sessions, pretending to inspect the landscaping, but clearly watching us. She made comments loud enough for Lily to hear, "This isn't a playground," or "You're blocking the path again." Then one sunny afternoon, everything changed. Lily was practicing a new balance exercise with Daniel. She was using a lightweight therapy bar, laughing every time she steadied herself. I was sitting nearby, watching proudly, when I saw Karen storming down the sidewalk, phone in hand, fury etched on her face. "What is this?" she shouted. "Unauthorized activity on HOA property again?" Daniel looked up, patient as ever. "Good afternoon, Ms. Whitmore. We've been over this. This is approved medical therapy." Karen waved her hand dismissively. "You're trespassing. This isn't a medical facility." Before I could intervene, she stepped closer, pointing her phone like a weapon. "I'm recording this for the board." "Go ahead," Daniel said calmly. "We're not hiding anything." That's when she reached forward, grabbed the therapy bar out of Lily's hands, and shouted, "You can't use equipment here." Lily startled, gasping, and Daniel instinctively moved to steady her chair. Karen stumbled backward slightly. And in that instant she screamed, "He pushed me. He attacked me." The neighbors who had been watching from their porches came rushing over. I stood frozen, disbelief flooding my chest. "Karen, nobody touched you." But she was already dialing 911. "There's a man assaulting me. I'm the HOA president." And just like that, our quiet neighborhood became a scene of chaos. Section 2. The accusation. Within 10 minutes, 2 police cars rolled into the street, lights flashing. Karen met them in the middle of the cul-de-sac, clutching her phone dramatically like she'd survived a war. "He's dangerous," she cried, pointing at Daniel. "He hit me with a metal bar. I want him arrested." The officers turned toward Daniel, who stood beside Lily, calm and professional. "Sir, please step forward," one said. "We just need to hear both sides." Daniel nodded, showing his ID badge. "Officer, I'm a licensed pediatric therapist. Everything we were doing was part of a physical therapy session. I didn't touch her. Karen scoffed. He's lying. I have witnesses. But the witnesses, a few neighbors she'd alienated over the years, stayed silent. They'd seen what really happened. One even whispered to the officer, "She's exaggerating again." That's when Daniel calmly reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. "I have something that might help clear this up," he said. It was a body camera. He wore it on every home visit as part of his job's liability policy. It records every session for safety and documentation. The officers exchange glances. "You're saying you have footage?" "Yes, sir," Daniel replied. "Everything from the moment we began therapy to when she arrived." Karen's face drained of color. "He can't do that. That's illegal recording." The officer shook his head. "Not in a public space, ma'am." They escorted everyone back to their vehicles, where Daniel uploaded the footage to their system. I waited on the curb beside Lily, my hands shaking. She looked up at me with wide eyes. "Daddy, did we do something bad?" I crouched beside her. "No, sweetheart. We did everything right." After what felt like hours, the lead officer returned. He approached Daniel, nodded once, and said, "You're free to go." Then he turned toward Karen. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us for questioning." Karen's mouth fell open. "What? I'm the victim." "Not according to this footage," the officer said coolly. "It shows you initiating contact, taking property, and making a false report." Gasps rippled from the watching neighbors. Karen turned toward me, her expression morphing from outrage to humiliation. "You did this," she spat. "You and your—" "Don't finish that sentence," I warned. The officers guided her to the car, and she screamed the whole way, claiming corruption, bias, conspiracies. Lily flinched at the noise, clutching the armrests of her chair. When the cars finally pulled away, the neighborhood fell into a stunned silence. Daniel exhaled shakily. "I've dealt with difficult parents before," he murmured, "but never like that." I looked at him. "You handled it perfectly. She'll answer for this." That night, word spread fast. Neighbors shared the video, and by morning everyone knew the truth. Karen had tried to intimidate a disabled child and her therapist, then lied to the police. The HOA board called an emergency meeting. Karen didn't show up, but for the first time since moving there, I saw something remarkable, neighbors knocking on our door not to complain but to apologize, to thank us, to offer support. One said, quietly, "We've all been afraid of her. You finally stood up to her." I realized then that what had happened wasn't just about Lily. It was about everyone she'd ever bullied. Section 3. The fallout the following morning, the HOA's group chat, normally filled with passive-aggressive reminders about recycling bins and lawn heights, exploded with messages. Dozens of neighbors had watched Daniel's footage. It spread like wildfire. The video clearly showed everything. Karen marching toward us, yelling, yanking the therapy bar from Lily's hands, then pretending to fall backward as if Daniel had attacked her. No pushing, no contact, just pure theater. For years, she'd ruled this neighborhood through fear. Now, she was finally being seen for what she truly was, a bully wrapped in fake authority. Still, the days that followed were tense. An officer came by to collect a formal statement from me and Daniel. They said Karen was being investigated for filing a false police report and harassment of a disabled child, both serious offenses. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted safety for Lily. But Karen wasn't done trying to twist the story. That evening, a letter appeared in everyone's mailbox. It was written on official HOA letterhead and signed by Acting President Karen Whitmore. In it, she accused us of creating disturbances threatening HOA officials and illegally recording on community property. She even claimed she had sustained injuries during the supposed assault. When I read it, my hands trembled with disbelief. How could she still be doubling down after everyone had seen the footage? But Daniel only smiled. "It's desperation," he said. "She's cornered." The next morning, I got a call from Officer Ramirez, the same one who had responded that day. His tone was serious, but calm. "Mr. Hale, I wanted you to know, the DA's office reviewed the footage. They've dropped her complaint and are moving forward with charges against Ms. Whitmore." She'll be arraigned next week. I thanked him quietly. When I hung up, I looked over at Lily, who was coloring at the kitchen table. Sweetheart, I said softly, remember how I told you the truth always comes out? She nodded, smiling faintly. Even when people lie? Especially when they lie. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe, but the HOA wasn't exactly rushing to make things right. The board members, most of whom had let Karen run wild for years, were suddenly silent. No apology, no statement. They were waiting to see which way the wind blew. That weekend, the board scheduled a special emergency meeting at the clubhouse. I decided to go. Daniel came with me as a witness, and half the neighborhood showed up too, more than I'd ever seen at one of those meetings. The air was thick with tension. The vice president, Mark Simmons, called the meeting to order. He looked nervous. First item, discussion regarding the recent incident involving HOA president Ms. Whitmore. People immediately started talking over each other. Some defended her. Most didn't. One woman near the front, Mrs. Lang, raised her hand sharply. We all saw the video, Mark. That wasn't an incident. That was harassment of a child with disabilities. How is she still president? Murmurs of agreement filled the room. Mark stammered. The board hasn't had a chance to vote her out. Someone shouted from the back. She's embarrassed the whole neighborhood. That was the breaking point. One by one, residents stood up to share their stories, the fines, the intimidation, the public shaming. A man in his 60s described how she'd tried to get his veterans' flagpole removed. Another woman said Karen once told her to trim her kids' laughter because it was too loud. By the time they were done, there was no saving her reputation. Mark finally sighed and said, all those in favor of removing Ms. Whitmore as HOA president, raise your hand. Every single hand went up. He nodded solemnly. Motion passed. It was over, at least officially. After the meeting, neighbors approached me and Daniel, shaking our hands, thanking us for standing up. One older man said, you did what none of us could. You made her accountable. But the victory was bittersweet. When I got home, Lily was asleep, curled up with her stuffed dog. I knelt beside her bed, brushing her hair gently from her face. She murmured in her sleep, it's okay now, Daddy. And for the first time in a long while, it really was. Still, the days ahead weren't simple. Karen refused to leave quietly. The next morning, she drove around the neighborhood, taking photos of houses and documenting violations. She glared at us whenever we passed. Once, she even parked outside our house for an hour, just sitting in her car. I called the police again, and Officer Ramirez assured me they were building a restraining order. We'll make sure she stays away, he said. Meanwhile, something unexpected began to happen. Neighbors started helping each other again. People who'd avoided each other for years began talking over fences, organizing cleanups, repainting mailboxes, even hosting small barbecues. The fear Karen had spread was lifting. Daniel continued Lily's therapy sessions, now with a small crowd of kids cheering her on. She loved the encouragement, and each time she succeeded at a new movement, the neighbors clapped like she'd won a gold medal. The sense of community we'd long hoped for was finally forming, ironically because of the person who had tried to destroy it. Then one day, about a week later, a white SUV pulled up to the curb while Lily and I were outside. Karen stepped out, clutching a folder. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with defiance. I hope you're happy, she hissed. You ruined my life. My position. My reputation. I stood calmly between her and Lily. You did that yourself. She scoffed. You think they'll forgive you? They'll turn on you next. Just wait. Before I could answer, another car pulled up, Officer Ramirez again. He approached with quiet authority. Ms. Whitmore, he said, we've got your restraining order here. You're to have no contact with the Hale family, their therapist, or this property. You understand. Karen froze. You can't be serious. He handed her the papers. It's court-issued. You come near this address again, you'll be arrested. For once, she was speechless. As she turned to leave, Lily called softly, you could have just been nice. Karen flinched, but didn't look back. When her car disappeared around the corner, the air seemed lighter somehow. Daniel walked over, kneeling beside Lily. You okay, champ? She smiled. Yeah, she's gone now, right? He nodded. For good. I looked up at the sky, that deep, calm blue after a storm, and felt something I hadn't felt since moving here. Peace. But I also knew this wasn't just our story anymore. It had become a lesson for everyone around us, a reminder that standing up for what's right doesn't just protect one person. It changes entire communities. And as the sun set behind our quiet little street, I realized that sometimes justice doesn't come from shouting or fighting, it comes from standing firm, telling the truth, and refusing to back down. Section 4. The healing. It's strange how quickly a neighborhood can change once fear is gone. For months after Karen's removal, it felt like the entire street took a deep breath for the first time in years. The same people who once closed their blinds when she patrolled the sidewalks were now smiling at each other, waving, offering help. The rusted benches at the park were repainted, the community garden bloomed again, and children, including my daughter Lily, filled the cul-de-sacs with laughter instead of silence. Karen, meanwhile, faded from view. She sold her house within a month after the court order and disappeared, her name now only whispered as a warning. No one missed her, but the scars she left behind, especially for Lily, took longer to heal. Her therapy resumed in full force, and Daniel often reminded her that she was stronger than anyone realized. Every scar, he'd tell her, is proof that you've healed. Those words stuck with her. She began keeping a journal, drawing pictures of what courage looked like, a small girl with braces standing tall in front of a crowd. Sometimes she'd show me a page and say, "This is me. I'm brave now." I'd nod and tell her, "You've always been brave, sweetheart. You just didn't know it yet." A few months later, the HOA held its first election under the new leadership. Mark Simmons refused to run again. He said the stress of working with Karen had burned him out, so the board nominated a new president, Susan Garcia, a retired teacher known for her patience and fairness. During her first meeting, she invited me to speak. I didn't plan a speech, but as I stood before the crowd, I felt something shift inside me. I moved here hoping for peace, I said. What I got instead was a lesson. We all saw what happens when fear runs a community. But we also saw what happens when people stand up, not with anger, but with truth. My daughter taught me that. The room was silent, the kind of silence that means people are listening. Susan smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Hale. And please tell Lily she's our honorary member of the community committee, the one that decides what's fair for everyone." The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was warm, sincere, human. That night, Lily asked what honorary meant. When I explained, her eyes lit up. "So, I get to help make the rules now?" "Yes," I said, smiling. "The fair kind." After that, she took her new job seriously. With Daniel's help, she drafted ideas. Ramps for the park, designated quiet zones for therapy animals, and a kindness day where everyone in the community had to do something nice for someone else. It started small, but people actually followed through. Kids helped mow older neighbors' lawns. Teenagers volunteered to walk dogs. For the first time, I realized Lily wasn't just healing, she was helping others heal too. About 6 months later, we got an unexpected letter in the mail, not from the HOA, but from the state attorney's office. It was an official notice stating that Karen had been found guilty of filing false police reports, harassment, and misuse of HOA authority. She'd been fined heavily, placed on probation, and barred from serving on any board or community organization for 10 years. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. I didn't celebrate. Justice had been served, but the real victory wasn't in the court's decision. It was in what followed, the quiet, everyday peace that had replaced chaos. Spring came early that year. The wildflowers behind our house bloomed in bursts of yellow and violet, and every evening Lily and I would walk down the hill to watch the sunset. Sometimes Daniel joined us, sometimes the neighbors did too. It became a kind of ritual, a silent reminder that life could be good again. One evening, as we stood there watching the horizon, Lily turned to me. "Daddy, remember when that lady was mean to us?" I hesitated. Yes, I do. She's gone now, Lily said softly, but I think we made her go because we didn't stop being good. Her words nearly broke me. I nodded slowly. That's exactly it, sweetheart. You never stop being good, no matter how bad people act. That's what real strength is. She grinned, her braces glinting in the fading light. Then I'm really strong. You are, I whispered, stronger than anyone I know. A gentle breeze passed through the field, brushing the grass in waves. The sound of laughter from nearby homes floated on the air, a sound I once thought I'd never hear again. The world felt right, finally. Later that night, after Lily went to bed, I sat outside on the porch with Daniel. He took a sip of coffee and looked out over the street. Funny how things work out, he said. The same place that almost broke you is now the one you helped fix. I nodded, thinking of everything we'd been through. The fear, the humiliation, the anger. Sometimes it takes one person's cruelty to show everyone else what kindness is supposed to look like. Daniel smiled. And sometimes it takes one little girl with more courage than all of us. He was right. The months turned into a year, and our community kept growing stronger. The annual HOA newsletter even featured Lily's story, The Bravest Heart in Brookstone. It didn't talk about Karen or what she did. It talked about resilience, about kindness, about how one act of compassion can rebuild trust where there was none. Now, when I see new families move into the neighborhood, I don't feel the dread I once did. Instead, I walk up, shake their hand, and tell them, "Welcome home." It's a good place. It just needed to remember how to be one. And every time I see Lily racing down the sidewalk in her new braces, laughing with the other kids, I know that's true. In the end, the story wasn't about Karen's cruelty, it was about what came after. The healing, the courage, the quiet strength that keeps good people standing when the world tries to knock them down. And as the sun sets over our street, I realize something simple, but profound. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it smiles in the laughter of a child who's finally free.